Hey everybody, welcome. It is so wonderful to have you. I hope you guys are doing well today. I have an amazing guest for you today. Welcome for me, one of my authors, Kris
Yeah.
K. Haines. I'm going to read this because you all know I cannot remember anything to save my life, but Kris is a Jeopardy silver medalist and a proclaimed self adrenaline junkie. She can be found barreling down mountains in the winter and hugging the turns on her motorcycle in the summer. That sounds amazing. That is when she doesn't have her nose stuck in a book. She lives outside of Philadelphia, PA, with her supportive husband and two sassy pugs. I love that so much.
They're very
All right,
sad.
first and foremost, I have to ask Jeopardy? That's so
Yeah.
cool.
That's like check that off the bucket list, right? It was in 2018, so gosh, like 6 years ago now. And I was lucky enough, I was on one of the seasons before Alex Trebek passed away. So I did get a chance to meet him. And
That's
yeah,
so
it was like
cool.
one of the best experiences of my life. I loved it. It was before I got into writing. So I was like hyper focused on trivia. I watched it every day. I like took notes of my score. I was super into it, and it was really fun. I almost won. I came within like $1,000 of the guy that I was against. He was like the 7-day champion. So
That's amazing, especially because you never know what the categories are going to be. Like sometimes I
yeah,
actually do pretty well. Other times I'm like, I need to go back to school. This is not.
yeah. Sports was my weakness, and thank goodness there were no sports categories. But yeah, it was really fun.
That's awesome. Well, first and foremost, congratulations on the release of your third book. That's so exciting and it's such a massive accomplishment. How do you feel?
I'm like mind blown. Like I'm not one of those people who like dreamt of being an author. I'm gonna be 43 at the end of the year. And so it's like I haven't dreamt about it or read stories since I was younger. It just kind of like grabbed a hold of me during the pandemic. And then yeah, it's insane to have my third book coming out. I don't even really know how I did it.
You know what? I love that because I feel like so many authors that talk about their origin story, hero or villain origin story, they talk about their origin story. They're like, I've been writing books since I can remember, and I used to write fan fiction, and that's amazing, and that's so exciting that they've had that journey. But so many people then I feel like they're like, oh well, if I didn't do that, if I didn't go through the rough patches in like my teen years and write all
Right.
those horribly awkward stories, like I'm never going to be able to do it now. But you can totally start at
And
any age and
yes.
make it a reality clearly because you're on book 3 and you started, you said, in the pandemic. That's no time at all. Oh my
I know.
gracious.
I know. Yeah, it's crazy. And for me, it's like I never wrote stories, but I've been like a voracious reader
Mhm.
all of my life. And I just really love like stories in general, like movies and TV shows. So it's like pulling from my love of all those things, and for some delusional reason, thought, hey, maybe I can write a novel. Maybe I can write a series. Let's start with something easy. Let's just do an epic fantasy series with a bunch of, new characters and multiple POVs. And yeah, it'll be fine.
Small goal, very simple,
Yeah.
straightforward, no issues. That's awesome. So I know the book coming out is a 2.5.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about sort of the series as a whole.
Sure. It's called the Memory Puller series. You can see there's book one right behind me, book two, The Exile and the Savior,
And the special edition cover,
and
I
the special
see it.
edition. Yes, the hardback and the
It's
paperback.
beautiful.
So pretty. It's basically like fae and humans, right? So there's this like evil empire that kind of controls the land, and all the fae live on the continent, which is very modernized, and the humans live in the colonies, which are totally antiquated. They've kind of been sent there after the war. And I really loved the idea of Fae romantasy, but I wanted to kind of give it a little bit of a twist. So the Fae feed off of human emotions, and there's this order of women called the Shrouded Sisters that my female main character belongs to in the beginning of book one. And they pull memories from humans that get brewed into a drink that then the Fae consume, that kind of gives them that that feeding that they need from the emotions. So she's a human with a little touch of magic. And in the beginning of the first book, she is kind of like a Robin Hood-esque character. So she pulls these memories, she looks for treasures, and then she steals them to like help the misfortunate humans in the colonies. And she gets captured by a Fae officer on that first night. And she ends up pulling his memory to escape from him, and then her sisters start disappearing, and he gets assigned to the case. So the first book is really actually close in to the two main characters, Tristan and Cassandra, and how they're working together, and like, is he going to remember her? And then once you get into book two, and even book 2.5 and book three that I'm working on, the world really expands a lot further, and you see kind of what's going on the continent, what are the consequences of this like evil empire that's oppressing the humans, and it turns a little bit more epic than it is in the first book. So
Well, and I think that's what you want to do a lot of times. I feel like, talking from an editorial standpoint, authors go in with these huge, big, wide scope ideas, which are amazing, but it can make it really hard to get into the series versus if you start narrow and then you widen the scope, it can be sort of like growing with the characters, growing with the world, and it can make it a much more immersive experience. So I love that. I think it's a great idea. Obviously, you've had both my good and my critical feedback, so you know my thoughts. But it's also, I feel like it's a ton of fun because it's got a little bit of everything for anyone that likes that type of book. And it does take a bit of a different take. It almost kind of feels in some respects like magic, but then it's also kind of like vampires, but they're actually fae, and then you've got
yeah,
humans in there. So it's sort of all of the pieces that fantasy or romantasy readers, you want to call it, that they love, but a little bit different so that they're getting something new and fresh and exciting.
yeah, exactly. And that was so important to me. And a lot of people market based on tropes, which is great because
Mhm.
we love people to understand what they're getting into in a book. But I think it's also really important to make sure that they feel fresh and they're not being done like the exact same way. So that was one of my main focuses for this series, just to make sure that it's familiar, but it's fresh. It's kind of like, okay, so American Idol is like one of my favorite shows ever. And I just love hearing people do covers of songs, but like in a
Mhm.
remixed kind of way. That's because it's like it's familiar, but it's new. So that's kind of the energy that that I was going for with the series.
That's awesome. I love it. And I feel like that is something that a lot of people either love or hate about the publishing
Mhm.
industry, right? So everybody kind of wants to come up with that brand new, unique, super exciting idea, but in some respects there are only so many stories to be told, so you got to find just sort of a new your version of it, right? Which
Exactly.
can be frustrating but also can be really powerful because it sort of emphasizes the only you can tell your story because you've got
Yeah.
that unique view, that unique idea, and it can help authors that are new or existing maybe take that jump into the new book that they've been thinking of, or the new genre or anything of that sort.
Yeah, it is helpful because you have the guardrails there, and that gives you something to aim towards, which I think makes it a little bit easier. And there's a reason why these types of stories are so popular, right? It's the same types of stories that humans have been telling for 10,000s of years. It just, it touches something, it touches the human experience in all of us. So you don't want to stray too far from that.
I love it. And I am one of those guilty readers where I'm like, I want my favorite book, but I want it just different
Yes.
enough for me to read it again and again and again and again.
Exactly.
Like I would love for something new to happen, but I also want like my
Mhm.
comfort tropes. I need my comfort tropes.
Yep,
So
exactly.
you talked about the fact that you started this in the pandemic and you started writing it. So talk a little bit about sort of your process and kind of how you decided to go self-published. Talk a little bit about your process with that.
Yeah, sure. So the reason that I started in, let's see, I think it was no, not January, June of 2021, I read From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Lynn Armentrout.
Hmm.
And I didn't even know the fantasy romance genre existed before I read that book. And I was like instantly instantly obsessed with it. And so I read like her entire back catalog. I read Sarah J. Maas's entire back catalog. And I was just
Mhm.
like, I was so inspired. There was like this fire in my creative soul. And I was like, I don't know why. I've, like I said, I've never wanted to do this, but I have to write one of these books for myself. So I spent I spent probably a good like 3 to 4 months just like reading books on the craft, thinking about the characters because that was really important to me. Is like get to know Tristan and Cassandra really well before I figure out what they're going to do, right? Before I figure out what kind of problems and plot I'm going to throw at them and then see how they navigate it. So I was kind of coming from it that way. So in December of 2021, I actually started drafting. And it took me about, I want to say 4 months to like
Okay.
finish that version of the book, which is very different from where we ended up. But that version of the book, I was so delusionally self-confident. I'm like, I'm gonna query this. I'm gonna get
I
an
love that
agent.
though. We
I'm gonna get
want
an
that.
agent in like in a month. It's gonna be so good. So I did attempt the querying process. Not
Okay.
for very long, not long enough to ever have had any benefit from it because I'm also super impatient. And I also feel like around that time, it became really clear that being an indie author was a very viable path to
Oh
take
yeah.
in this industry. You see a lot of people, especially a lot of really talented women, having a ton of success and just kind of like doing it on their own. So I got really inspired by that. And I like to have a lot of control anyways. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna pull all my queries out. I'm gonna try to do this myself. And here we are, 3 books later.
I love that. Yeah, I think both paths, it took a long time for people to sort of respect self-publishing, and it has, I think, come to that point now where, I mean, it's always been two viable options, but now it's really, I mean, even more than just that, but two sort of core viable options. And I think it just depends on who you are, what you prefer, what you like, and it works both ways, right?
Yeah.
So, if you like control, if you want to be able to know when your book's going to come out for sure, what exactly your cover is going to look like, what
Yep.
format it's going to be in, and you're comfortable with sort of stepping forward and doing that learning process and, leaning into those decisions, that's amazing. Like, be that boss. That's so
Yeah.
cool. But if you would much rather send it to somebody and have the publishing team who has worked a long time in the industry and will
Yeah.
be able to sort of get it in different places and push it in different ways, then that's great too.
Cool.
And there's I think it's really really powerful either way. But it is very exciting to see more and more people taking that step where they're really considering their options and figuring out what works best for them. And I love that this worked for you, not only because obviously it got your book out into the world and it's a ton of fun, but also then I got my hands on it, which was a ton of fun for me. So that was awesome.
And
Awesome for that.
you really have to like weigh the pros and cons, right? Because there's like doing this way, this indie way, like literally everything yourself, right? Like you have
Mhm.
to find yourself an editor, find yourself a cover designer, make all your social media channels, like email newsletters. I finally set up my Etsy shop a couple weeks ago, and I am literally the person picking and packing and shipping all of that. Like you're literally every single job you're doing yourself, at least for where I am in my indie journey. I'm sure other indie authors have larger teams and
Yeah.
maybe other people that help with that. But not that is one of the cons, I think, is like just not having that support system, that traditionally published authors would have, and having such easy access to people that are so experienced and know the industry so well. Like I made a joke I made a joke once on Threads that I was like, this is what it's like being an indie author. Like, oh, there's nobody telling me I can't do this. Oh my God, there's nobody telling me I can't do this. It's like it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yes, it is very much like, you want to, have a problem with authority and you're like, I am the authority. Like no
Right.
one's making me no one's making me sit down at this computer. Dang it, I can't complain. I have to actually just do it if I want it to happen. Yeah, for sure. I completely understand that.
Right.
Yes, it is, like, yeah, pros and cons both ways. It really just depends on what works best for everybody. But yeah, self-publishing is hard, but it's so
Yeah.
good too.
It's so much it is, like, a gazillion times harder than I expected, when I waded into it, which, like, literally everybody that has done this before me has said, but some people just have to learn the hard way, and unfortunately, I am one of those people.
Well, you don't know, everybody's experience is different. You don't know
Yeah.
until you do it, and
Mhm.
clearly you have kept with it and you're on book 3. You've got a special edition. You've got so many awesome beautiful things. Oh my goodness, it is so encouraging and wonderful to see somebody, flourishing and making those forward movements and being able to see just such awesomeness come out on the page and see sort of that vision come to life. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so we are going to discuss the elephant in the room. I mentioned earlier, obviously, that I am your editor, so I'm obviously biased, even though I'm not, and it is clearly
Even though you shouldn't be, right?
I'm not at all. Um, but we talked about sort of the publishing choices that you made and the way you got into everything and everything like that. And again, complete honesty here, people. She's allowed to say good and bad things. I promise it won't hurt my feelings. So talk a little bit about sort of the editing process, because that is something I feel like every new author feels is a bit shrouded in mystery.
Yeah.
And it is certainly a learning process for everyone and for every book. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, the funny thing is like, we've worked on 3 books together now. Obviously, we'll be working on the next one when it's ready. And so, like, the first manuscript that I sent to you, I got your comments back, I got your feedback, I saw the types of questions that you were asking, and so when I'm writing the second and the third book, it's like in my head I'm like, okay, well, what would Susan do? What would she say about this? What choice would she make here? And so I'm like getting myself in your mindset when I'm writing, and so then when I send the manuscript back and you still have a ton of questions on the second one, it's like, oh no, I didn't get it right. No, but that's uh it's always there's like I'll talk about the good and the bad. The good is when I am like super in love with a twist, or I'm super in love with a scene and I'm like, oh my God, yes, this is like the coolest thing I've ever written. And then like you feel the same way. It's like, oh, so validating. And then the times where you ask some of the tougher questions, like, what was this person, why was this decision made? Or this doesn't make sense, or I don't really think I'm buying this. Most of the time, like, I had that same thought in my head when I was writing it, but I'm like, I can get away with this. Readers aren't going to notice. She's not going to notice, because if I make this change, I'm going to have to go back and fix all these other things that I've already baked into the manuscript, and I'm really lazy and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to see if I can sneak it past her. It never works. You always catch it. And so I think like that's the part of the process that I really appreciate, is like you help me um like not lean on my crutches, right? You help me like I know what the right decision is, but I made the wrong one for some whatever reason, and you call me out on it. And I think that's really what I need.
Yeah, so for a bit of context for anybody that's watching, so when you do an edit, every editor does things differently, but the way that I do an edit is I'll go through a manuscript several times. Even if it's just one round, you'll get one round of feedback from me, but I'm still going through it several times. The first time I read it is I just give my honest, almost like my reader reactions. And that's one of my favorite things. That's the best part of the job right there, is I get to be like, oh my gosh, did you see this coming? And I get to be really excited with you, and you get to see when I'm happy and sad and angry and confused. And part of that is to validate, for sure, but the other part of that is it's actually part of the editing, because if you didn't mean for me to be confused
Mhm,
there and you're seeing that I'm very confused, even
mhm.
if I don't mention it as a problem, you can be like, "Ooh, need to fix that."
Yeah.
And then I go back through the second round and I put all of my comments and questions and my lengthy explanations and my
Yeah.
random, "Hey, what would you feel about if we did this?" And
It's
to be clear,
also
all
the way that you do it is also really helpful for the foreshadowing stuff, because when like I can tell, because you'll add a comment on your first go round, and then you'll go back and be like, oh, now I understand why this is here. That's also like, yes, all right, that seed is planted in the right spot.
But and you know what? It works for better and for worse because sometimes you'll be like, ah, yes, this person is going to be this person's father, or ah,
Yeah,
yes, and so you can be like, okay, maybe too ham-handed on the foreshadowing, so it
right,
works really
right.
well. And you know, I'm always very clear. My comments are suggestions; they're not required changes. So I think the best part about the process for me is the collaboration. Right? You
Yeah,
call me or email me or text me or whatever, and you're like, hey, I agree with this. I don't agree with this, but I see the issue. Let's talk about it. And it's
right.
sort of a brainstorming process where I get to throw out like just random and wacky ideas and then see what sticks, see what gets you excited and to add that to your world or feel what's happening and everything like that. So that's certainly my favorite part about it, even though I know that sometimes makes your job a bit
No,
harder.
it's so necessary though, because it's just it's so necessary. And I've said this, I've said this to you before, like I always love my manuscript when I give it to you, but I worship it and adore it after after I've, taken all of your feedback and adjusted it and made all of those changes. It's like it's always 1,000 times better.
So now you get through the editing process, you fix everything to your liking, everything like that. So what does the rest of the process look like for you?
Usually after I've like fixed all those developmental issues, those structural issues, that's when I go back and I like polish the prose. So I
Mhm.
usually spend a couple read throughs doing that. And sometimes I'll send it out. Sometimes I send it out to beta readers to take a look at a draft. Sometimes if like I'm super comfortable with it, I'll be like, all right, well, maybe we'll just maybe we'll just skip that this time. But I do always send it to a copy editor then to just
Yep.
take a final look at the sentences, make sure they're really tight, that the prose makes sense, that I didn't use a word incorrectly, that I wasn't supposed to use. And then it goes to my ARC readers. And once it's in ARC reader hands, I usually don't mess with it after that, unless they find like a typo or something. Obviously, I'll
Right.
go back and fix it. But at that point, I'm usually like, all right, story's done, out of my hands, on to the next one.
So this week you have book 3, technically book 2.5
Mhm.
coming out, The Butcher and the Ballerina. It's I've been seeing all of your social media. I mean, I've already read it and I've been seeing all of your social media posts about it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, oh, I didn't tell you." So I am on TikTok more than probably is healthy. We're going to
Oh
be
yeah,
completely honest here.
it's a dangerous place.
But book talk especially because I'm such a sucker for marketing and for tropes and for everything like that. And you know all of the quintessential like I don't know book talker influencer people and they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, you know, it's about a girl who does this and they do this and they're talking about the tropes." And I'm like, "Oh, that sounds
Mhm.
great. Oh, I would totally read this." And it got to the end it was your book and I was like, "Oh, I have read that." So, oh, okay, cool. And I should have
Oh, that's
realized because
funny.
I looked down and you had liked it, and I was like,
Okay.
oh, okay. It made me laugh, and I was like, okay, cool. Well, at least I'm on brand. That's super exciting.
And at least
Um,
like, yeah, the marketing's working, right?
it
Um,
made me laugh. But anyway, side story aside, what so tell the viewers a bit more about the book that's coming out.
Sure. Yeah, so it's book 2.5 in the series. It's called The Butcher and the Ballerina. It takes place on the continent about like 200 years before the events of the first book. And it's the backstory of one of the characters. His name is Ronan Matakos. He is a beast runner fae, which in the world of the memory puller means he can shift into an animal. So he shifts into this ginormous white wolf. Um, it's his backstory. He had been a war hero even further back than that, and the Empire kind of turned on him, and they ended up caging his wolf, so he can't shift at the beginning of the Butcher and the Ballerina series, and he gets he gets into this like investigation with a character named Mireille, who is a spy slash assassin for the Empire, and they have to do this investigation together at a snowy mountain estate of an eccentric Fey billionaire. And they have to pretend to be lovers. So it's like really fun, fake dating as spies. Yeah, it sets up a lot of things for book 3, I will
Mhm.
say. And both of these characters are going to be point of view characters in book 3. So it is kind of a prequel or backstory, but it really shouldn't be skipped. There's a lot of lore and there's a lot of setup. So if somebody skips it and then starts book 3, which I'm working on now, they might be a little confused. So hopefully
I
people
don't
will read it.
I don't know that I knew that. I mean, I knew Ronan was going to continue, but I don't know that I knew that they were going to continue as like point of views. That's so
Oh,
exciting.
that's because you made the comment in my edit that I should figure out a way to tie this better to the main series. And I added an epilogue that you haven't even read yet. So you'll have to you have to go
I
back
wish
and read the epilogue.
I do. So it's one of the things that I am actually trying to do more is go back and read my books. My books.
Yeah.
I take
Your book.
ownership of
Yeah,
them. It's
there
fine.
are books. It's fine.
I share them with you. But go back and read them because it's so funny. I will say like I'll have as anybody that works in publishing, people are like, recommend me books.
Yeah.
So I will take any opportunity to be like, hey, how about this book? I literally actually just yesterday we had friends that they were heading out of town on vacation, and she was like, I just read Aktar. I'm loving it, but I don't have any of the others, and I don't have the rest of them on my shelf. She was like, what else do you have for me? And I was like, ooh. Oh, I have. I have books for you. And I pulled one of yours. And I give them to, but for other people they'll read the books that I recommend them. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I love this. Didn't you love when this happened or this?" And
Yeah.
I'm like,
What?
I remember it, but that's so very different than what I read because I read the earlier version. I really need to
Yeah.
get in the practice of going
Yeah.
back so I know I so that I can know all the twists and turns
Yeah.
because inevitably people want to talk about it and I'm like, I'm so excited you loved it. I don't remember that.
I'm trying to most of the stuff that I mean, obviously, I'm not going to talk about it here because no spoilers, but
No spoilers.
there were some pretty dramatic changes that I made based on your comments that you'd probably be able to figure out anyways. But before you get the manuscripts of book 3 when it's ready,
I
just
have
go
to
back
read
and
it.
read the epilogue in Butcher and you'll be fine.
Well, and the other thing I really liked what you were talking about earlier is that you kind of, especially with your first book, but I'm sure you do it for all of them, is you kind of sat with your characters and
Yeah.
sort of thought about them and learned them and everything like that. Not only because I think that helps you write, because then regardless of whichever direction your book takes, you kind of can sort of guess what your characters are going to do or how they're going to react or everything like that. So having a strong character base is very helpful. But even more than that, it's very helpful because I'm going to ask questions. And so
Mhm.
it'll help you have, because I feel like a lot of my questions, especially for Butcher and the Ballerina, again, no spoilers, uh, had to do with the characters, right?
Right.
And so,
And their
like,
motivations,
and their
like,
motivations
yeah,
and
yeah,
strengthening
yeah.
those. And so it was really fun to be able to play with that because you have such a strong sense of self of like who they are. So
Mhm.
we could kind of hash that out to just really refine them and make them basically come to life on the
Right,
page.
right.
And that was so much fun.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited um, for that to be out in the world.
I know,
I
me
will
too.
I
I
will
can't
put
believe
the
it.
I'll put the cover up here, and you can see them in their glory next to each other. They're beautiful. I'm so excited. So for anybody like yourself who has a crazy, brilliant, awesome idea, and it was like, I need to write this, or somebody who's like, I've written a book, but the self-publishing thing is terrifying, which it can be. What would you say to yourself back in 2021 now knowing all that you know now?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. There's a couple of pieces of advice I would give myself. The first would be to just sit down and write it, right? If you have an idea, and I know that set like everybody says that, and it sounds so cliche, but it really is so true. Like discipline, I feel like is like the easiest and hardest part of this of being an author. Like just literally just put your butt in your seat and just write some words. You know, they don't have to be good words. They're probably going to be horrible words. It's fine. Just like get it on the page, and then you can go back and fix it.
Mhm.
And that's honestly one of the reasons that I spend so much time getting to know my characters, because whenever I'm stuck, I'm just like, okay, what are they thinking? How are they feeling right now? And then I almost, like you said, your sister journals. Like I almost treat it like that. I'm like, okay, I'm writing Cassandra's journal right now. How is she feeling in this moment? And then eventually it leads me into, okay, no, this thing is going to happen, and I know where I'm going. So that would be my first piece of advice: is just like butt in seat, words on page. Like just do it.
For context, really quickly, we were talking before the video started. We probably should have started recording like 10 minutes earlier, but we were talking about my sister is also an author and she goes through this existential life crisis that I don't feel like she'll have any issue with me telling the world. That she gets through the middle of her newest, latest, and greatest book, and she's like, "This is horrible. Why am I doing this? Like, no one's ever gonna read this. This is awful." Everything like that, and I'm like, "You literally go through this every single time." So my piece of advice to her, to you, to anybody watching is if you are a person that journals or you have some way of kind of keeping track of these types of things, even if it's like a comment in your chapter for the day or whatever, write down like how you're feeling that day, because then, when you finish that book and you publish it and it's all shiny and perfect and beautiful and you're like, "Oh my gosh, how is it anything else?" And then you start writing book 2 and you're like, I don't even know how to string words together." You can look back and say, "Oh, look at pretty shiny book 1. I also went through that with this. Like, clearly, this is a cycle. I can do this. I should keep going,"
Yes,
everything like that.
yes.
So we were talking about that earlier with journaling, which is what she was referencing. But yes, I think that is a perfect piece of advice for people, and one of the hardest to follow for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because it's so easy to just be like, it's so easy to just wait for the inspiration to strike or for the new idea to come. And sometimes it's just not going to until you just start making the words flow. And the other thing that I would say is, this can feel very lonely to be an
Mhm.
author, right? Because you're stuck in your head with your characters alone in your writing room or wherever you're drafting. But having another set of eyes, or even having like critique partners, or getting some other writer friends who have been through this, just like trying to build yourself a little community of people that have been through this before, so you have somebody to go to when you're having those moments of crisis. Or have a trusted editor like Susan's, that
Right.
you're like my safety net, right? Which is
Yes.
like, I'm getting through the manuscript. I think it's pretty good, but like knowing that I'm going to have your eyes on it to ask all those tough questions and to make it even better, like it makes even those devastating moments of self-doubt better, because I'm like, Susan will tell me.
Well, and it's one of those things that I am not the right editor for everybody. And part of the reason for that is, as nice as I feel like I put my comments, I'm not going to hold back if something doesn't make sense or it doesn't work or something like that. I'm gonna tell you. And for I would say the majority of authors out there, that's what they want. Like they want that
Yeah.
safety net. They want somebody that's gonna be like, "I love this book, but here are the issues. Let's talk about how to get this even better." There are some authors out there, and I have run into this issue where I work with somebody and they basically just want positive feedback. And it gets to be a very interesting conversation because I'm like, that's not what you're gonna get from me.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I can't even fathom. I mean, I guess I can understand that, but wow, that's fascinating.
it's a mindset, and it is very hard to take criticism and questions and things like that. So it really just depends on. That's why we do sample edits and we chat beforehand and everything like that to make sure you know what you're getting, and
Yeah,
that my brand of crazy going onto your page is
matches my brand of crazy.
right, exactly, that they mesh, because that is whether you're working indie or traditional, that is so important, whether you're
Yeah,
hiring somebody like me or whether you're selling your book to a publisher, to a specific editor at a publisher, you should always have those conversations because even if you're really excited to have it edited or published or, sold or what have you, if the visions don't mesh, it's
Right.
it's
It's going to be painful
it's going to be
for
painful.
everybody. Yeah.
Yes, for
Yeah.
for everybody involved. And everybody wants your book to be amazing and to succeed and to do well. So to find somebody that you jive with, that they can, message you and be like, "So I have questions." is is the best feeling in the world because
Yeah.
it really is finding that community, finding people that you can talk to like that. So now I do have a question for you. Because this is something that authors ask me a lot, and I don't really have I'm not going to say a great answer for, because I've never really had to do it. How did you go about finding sort of that community, whether it was beta readers or critique partners? You can talk about how we connected as well, but more like your sort of your writing cohorts, if you will, because
Yeah.
I that's something I always recommend to people, and they're like, "Cool, that sounds awesome. How do I find them?"
You know what? It's like, again, it's simultaneously like the hardest and simplest thing in the world. Like, I literally just stalked some of my favorite indie authors on social media and like slid into their DMs.
I love
Or
that. It's
you
like dating.
Yeah, or you start interacting with their posts. And a lot of us are extremely friendly and awkward anyways. And like if somebody slides into our DMs and is like, "Wow, I really admire your book. I'd love to just chat or ask you a question about this." Like 99% of the time, you're going to get a response back and you're going to get, a ton of enthusiasm. And that's what I've found. And a little community of writers there where we're like cheering each other on, or if you have questions about how to do things. And obviously just like, finding editors or finding cover designers, like see who other people are working with.
Mhm.
Or even like my copy editor, for example, I found because I noticed him being credited in some of the books where I thought the prose was like really spectacular and really well done and similar to how I write. And I was like, all right, well, let me just reach out to this guy, and he was available. So yeah. Find what you can
Yeah.
on the internet. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. I know that can be hard, and even I've struggled with that sometimes, but most of the time people are gonna give you the benefit of the doubt and be really, really positive and happy to hear from you.
Well, and especially if you're willing to maybe be an arc reader for them,
Yeah.
or you just have a quick question and then you sort of build that relationship first. Like if you just like come at somebody and you're like, "Hey, can I send you something?" It may not
Right.
work as well. But
Right. Exactly. Start
if
small.
you right, if you build that friendship, and especially if it's because I know most authors are looking for sort of that back and forth, because literally everybody is going through the same thing where they're
Yeah.
in their office by themselves and they want somebody to take a look at this chapter or be able to chat with or do like a body doubling like writing session or something like that. And then yeah, as far as professional, like, editors, copy editors, proofreaders, cover designers, anything like that, literally look up your favorite authors and look at the
Yeah.
front and the back of their books, because it's
Yep.
almost always listed.
Yep.
And then obviously their work is quality because you're looking at a product that they have worked so hard on with your favorite author, and that's such a cool thing. It's one of my favorite things is when I get an email from somebody and they're like, "Hey, I loved this book. I saw your name. I
Yeah.
have a book." I'm like, "That's awesome. Like,
Also have a
let's chat."
book.
And so that is a ton of fun. So I think those are great pieces of advice. I think that's something that new or established authors can always benefit from.
The other
Um,
piece of advice that I would give to anybody starting out, not even a piece of advice, just like a little tip. Nobody has any idea what they're doing. Like, nobody has any idea what they're doing. So like if you're feeling that way too, it's fine. You're doing everything right. Like
Everybody Googles
nobody's
stuff
figured this out. Yeah.
every day, literally every day. Yep, it's that is so true.
And that doesn't
Yes.
even just apply, I think, to writing or editing. I feel like that's just life. I feel like the
Mhm.
older I get, the more I'm like, wow, no, really nobody has any idea what they're doing, do they? We're all
Oh,
just like, figuring this out as we go.
No, everybody's just super confident. You're like, they must know. They must know what they're doing. They seem like an adult. By law, if you have your stuff together and you're an
Yeah,
adult,
you
you
got to be like 10 years older, at least.
correct. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And so I sent that to my sister and I was like, this this does not compute. Like being an adult, you are required to be older than I am. She's like, you do realize that you're old now. And I was like, awesome.
It's hard. The older you get, it's yes, I know exactly how you feel. Or the
So
worst is like when you see somebody, and this happens to me all the time on Instagram, especially like
mhm.
you see somebody like like another author or bookstagram or something, and you're like, God, they really have their stuff together. They're so great at life. They obviously know exactly what you're doing, and then you find out that they're like 15 years younger than you, and you're like, oh God, where did I go wrong?
But yes, everybody is making it up. No one knows what they're doing, and that just that bonds us all. It is a bond
Exactly.
of
Comforting.
terror and
Comforting.
googling and just hope for the future that we're gonna figure it out at some point.
Yeah.
All right, so lastly, my last question for you is what is next for you and your series? I will put all the links below to the current books that are out, and everything so people can go check you out because they should immediately, obviously. But I know you've been talking a little bit briefly about book three, so give us a little hint of what you're working on or what you're doing right now or anything like that.
Yeah, so I'm deep in my first draft on book three. I have not announced the title, which I will not yet, because I'm still actually trying to figure out what it is. I'm afraid of committing to a title because that means I commit to this plot point, and if it doesn't work out, and then I have to change it. So I'm trying to ensure that I'm like fully committed to this is the story before I reveal the title. Um,
I do love really quickly as an aside, by the way, I love when you figured out the title for book two and then you realized like what the initials of the first of the words for the first and you were
oh, I
like
know. Teats.
best title ever. You were like, I'm not changing it even if you don't like
Yeah,
it. And I was like, I
sorry.
love it. It's my favorite. It was amazing.
So my hope is that book three will be done drafting and in your hands this fall, and then I'll be releasing it very early, not very early, early in 2025, sometime in Q1 of 2025. That's my goal. And based on based on the number of words that I'm aiming for and based on how long it took me for some of the other books, I think I can do it without, too many tears and hair pulling out. And then that will be the second to last book in the series. There'll be one more after that. I think that's the way the story is going. I think there will only be one more after that. And I'm hopeful to get both books three and book four out before the end of 2025. And then I've got some other ideas cooking. So
I was just gonna ask. So now when you have this series solidified, are you gonna continue on the romantasy?
oh
Or is
yes.
that okay?
Yes, I am definitely like I said, when I got into this genre, like I've always been a fantasy reader. I love fantasy novels, but I had no idea that you could like add spice in there. And you can have these like epic sweeping romances at the same time as you have all this like fun fantastical world building. And so I am a fantasy romance author, lover, reader for life. So I will
Me too.
definitely do some kind of fantasy romance series, hopefully in like 2026. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
I love it. I'm excited. It is very funny. I'm fine if there's like very little spice or there's like a ton of spice. I'm happy either way, but it does make me very happy that people have acknowledged a bit more that not even just romance, but love is a necessary component of
Yes.
life. And so it makes sense in a fantasy book. Like the same reason you have, war and politics and like it's kind of
Yeah.
gotta be there. And so now it's like like looking back at some of my older fantasy favorites, I'm like, I kind of wish the author would go back through and like just
Yes.
slide a couple extra chapters in there.
Totally agree with you. And I feel the exact same way. Like, I mean, my first book is a little spicy, but it's not like super spicy. There's obviously a lot more in book two, and even book
Yeah.
2.5. I mean, there's one super spicy scene, but like it's a slow burn up until that point. And I think not even the spice, like I need the romance. I need the
Mhm.
angst. I need the love to be a huge part of the story. And
You
I
need
yeah, I
the hand
totally agree
touch,
with
that
you.
moment where they're like,
Yes, maximum angst. That's like
yes.
that's what I need, and the tension. And yeah, gosh, some of those great fantasy books that I loved as a kid, if they would go back and just add a little bit more romance to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe
If
that's what
only.
all of us romantasy and fantasy romance authors are trying to do, right? It's like recreate those experiences, but just add a little bit more love.
It is one thing I'm really excited about because obviously, genres in publishing in general are quite cyclical. Like they have massive popularity and then they kind
Mm.
of slow down and everything like that. And some do sort of fade away. Like I don't know if you remember the sort of new adult trend that went on, I want to say like 10 years ago. It was like a massive boom of romances in college age, like,
Yes.
and it
Yes.
was super spicy and it hadn't really been done before. And there's tons of people that love it and tons of people that were against it. We're not going to dive into that. But anyway,
No.
it kind of faded. Like new adult isn't even really much of a
Right.
term anymore.
Right.
And I'm really excited because while I do feel like romantasy is going to certainly ebb and flow like every other genre, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Right.
In any way, shape, or form. I mean, just the length alone of Sarah J. Mass's series, I
Yeah.
think proves how long
Yeah.
this is gonna last. So it's really exciting. I am so excited to see where your series goes and how it is going to flourish and find all of its amazing readers because they are going to absolutely love it. I'm excited to get my hands on book three. Um,
I'm typing as
so
fast as I can.
exactly. So I'm sending you all of the good writing vibes because that
Thank
just
you.
means I get
I
books
need them.
faster.
I will soak them in. I need them.
Awesome. Well, thank you for talking with me today. I really appreciate it. And for those of you that are watching, definitely check out the books below. Go buy them, read them, love them. You will. And don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next week, keep writing.